Hi, I'm Mary Beth Quinn, a mixed media artist from Nashville, Tennessee, and today I'm going to take you on my little journey of working to scale up my experiments in which I've developed this layered botanical that I've been working on and just released a class on, where I use painted tissue paper to make these paintings. Well, now I want to go larger. I'm going to show you how I made this painting. It's an 11 by 14. It's not that huge, but it's a heck of a lot bigger than these guys.
So I always start with just a piece of mixed media paper. I like to paint on paper, especially when I'm still in the process of really developing an idea and seeing where I can take it. Paper just feels so low stakes. You know, you can throw it away. It's not a huge expense. Even though this is really nice mixed media paper, you know, it's still comes on a tablet and you've got lots of them. It's not like a canvas. And so I just start with these papers that I've made. I think this one is just on tissue paper, and I've probably made those flowers with either acrylic or watercolor. I'm not sure which, but I'm just picking out at this point. I've picked out a number of papers that I just like how the colors go together. And so I'm not being fussy about what goes where at this stage. I am literally just trying to cover the surface. That's what I'm trying to do. Just cover the surface, and I'm just, you know, seeing what I can gather to work with. I call this the generative stage. I'm just generating stuff to work with. I'm not in any sort of real decision-making process. I don't have an end game in mind. I don't have something that I'm shooting for besides just the general idea of I've worked with this process enough that I know I'm beginning to know what I really like as far as composition and the size of the flowers compared to the size of the surface. I know what color combinations I'm really beginning to like working with. But beyond those decisions that I've really just found out by playing and experimenting with, I'm not making any big decisions at this point. I don't have a final composition in mind. I'm literally making it up as I go, and to some degree, I'm allowing it to show me where it's going. So now I've just picked or torn out an accent piece that I had put on some Abaca teabag paper. It's my favorite kind of teabag paper for these kind of really bold accents because it's very thin. As you can see, it just disappeared into the surface there. But it's really absorbent, so it soaks up the color really well. This is another piece of that same Abaca paper, and I'm just finding my general placement. Where do I probably want my focal points to be? And that's where I'm putting these accent pieces. They're in no way bold enough to take center stage, but they're going to be really nice support players. So it's at this stage here where I hear a lot of people say that they love painting freely, but they start to feel paralyzed by decision making. And that's because even though you might know that the painting's not working yet, you like what you have. And so you're just scared you're going to mess something up with that next bold move. So this is where it's good to think in terms of this can always just be an experiment, and that my main objective is just to see what happens here. Because when you take the pressure off of yourself like that, it really helps. And another thing that's good to know is that if you put something on, if it's still wet, you can just pull it right off again. So I think having some thoughts that you can think on purpose when you're typically feeling overwhelmed or paralyzed or unable to move forward, just find thoughts that work to calm you down, and it keeps you in the discovery process and in the learning process.
Now I'm at the place on this painting where, you know, I've generated the things that I'm going to work with. I've put in some papers with interesting designs on them. I've put in a couple of semi-accent pieces to sort of hold that place where I'm wanting to have bigger accents. But my choices are at this point to figure out, with what I've got going on here, to begin to evaluate what it is that I'm going to bring forward and make more, and what it is that I'm going to minimize and begin to recede. So those are the choices that I'm stepping into right now. First, I'm going to think about what I'm going to bring forward. Now, I've put in these accent pieces here. This area right here, this has a semi-faint flower here that I can accentuate, has a bigger something here that I can also accentuate. And then in this corner up here, I want to make this more of a thing as well. So here are the ideas that I'm considering. One of them is, I have this abaca paper that I painted some things on, and I'm really liking these colors right here. This orangey color may be up in this corner. Nothing about this is extremely definite. So I was thinking I might try to dominate this area with this accent piece and see if what I've already put on here just adds to it and supports it. So I'm going to try that first.
One of the things that I've learned by experimenting with this process is that I really like to make my botanical figures in different levels of specificity. So the ones that I put on early on in this painting were more vague. They weren't as saturated in color. They're a bit more airy. And these are on abaca paper, and they're bolder, and the color is strong, and they're a bit more specific.
I love that little figure. It's maybe just not quite strong enough.
So far, these bolder pieces really seem to be working. They're taking center stage. But, you know, if you're feeling paralyzed or scared that you're going to mess something up, then you're extremely unlikely to take these chances. So it's all about working to get your mind in a place of relaxation in the process, and just a little trust that you'll find your way. And at the very, very least, you'll learn something, and that's no small thing. That's really the whole point, and the only way that we become better artists.
I was going to do that, but I don't like how all those leaves are pointing all that same direction. I'm not too crazy about that.
At this stage, I'm not only evaluating where my focal points need to be, but as a result of that, I'm really evaluating what things are catching my eye too much. They just need to be these faint supportive players. And so that bottom left and right there where I'm working in the upper right, I'm just using this incredible tea bag paper that I have. I'm not even sure of the brand, but it's really thick, but it's also transparent. So I can use it to really obscure things. And it really helps in this process of supporting the focal points, because you don't want all these things competing. And now I'm just shoring up the eye-catching ability of these focal points by adding in some watercolor, just bringing up the saturation of color in these botanical figures right here, and just trying to make them more eye-catching and interesting using some more pigment. And I love the way that watercolor runs and moves, and so that's why I've opted to use that instead of just acrylic, diluting acrylic paint. This is just my favorite yellow-green color, where I mix in a little orange. It makes it the perfect shade of yellow-green.
So in my attempt to scale up my layered botanicals into bigger sizes, the trick really is getting the scale of the individual figures to match what it was on smaller pieces. So on the smaller pieces, if the focal point was something that took up maybe 40 of the surface area, then the trick is figuring out how to make those same focal points bigger when you get into a bigger size. Your same brushes won't do the same things. You'll have to figure that out. So this is my attempt. What I really want is this figure here is too small for what I have determined that I'm going for. So I had already made this botanical figure on a piece of, I don't know, what is this? I think it might be rice paper, not sure. But it's very bold and vivid, which is what I want. But what I'm really going for is trying to figure out how to make this figure right here much bigger. So I'm going to attempt to do that by just adding more to this. It doesn't have to be, for me, distinct. I'm just trying to fill it out. Now to just figure out where to place it and how I want this to look. So I want to put down ample medium because this is rice paper, so it's very absorbent. It needs a lot to really adhere well. And then I'll just spread it out. It doesn't really matter to me too much that you can't see if this is a grouping of flowers or one big flower. The specificity of it isn't my aim at all. In fact, I like the looseness of it. Now I have a couple little leaves here that I can add to really fill this out. Let's see, up here. It will be seen pretty nicely. Put it down here somewhere. There, I think space-wise, that really achieved my objective. That other one was just too small. It wasn't serving that function of really taking over that area and being the focal point. And I think this really helped it get closer to that.
Here's some close-ups of the final product. As you can see, I really came in with some watercolor and shored up the centers of the flowers just to ground them a little bit, make them more stable and recognizable. But overall, it was a great exercise and one that I needed to figure out. And I'm happy with it. It took a while, though, so it's not an easy thing. So here it is in a mock-up in a frame, and I'm happy with the composition overall. If you'd like to know more about this layered botanical process that I'm using, I have left some information and the link down in the description of the video. We would love to have you join us. It is really just a fun process. And if you don't quite feel ready for a class, you can get my free collage kit, which is just an introduction into the wonderful medium of collage. And as always, I appreciate you spending your precious time with me. It's always a pleasure.